All right. Whoa. What do we got here? Well, don't know what is happening here. Oh. Dar Gabe. Come on, Gabe. What's going on? Jeez. Been a busy day. Busy indeed. Um, let's say hello to everybody tuning in real quick from the chat. Hello, Raquel Flores. She's in the house, of course. Hello, Miss Yolanda Chin, checking us out over there on YouTube. So if you're checking us out for the first time, please head over to our YouTube channel. Hit the like and subscribe button while you're there, and hit the notification bell because that will let you know whenever we are live, whenever we schedule new lives, and whenever we drop new video content on the channel. So head over there to the Gabe Little Experience, and soon, very soon, exciting news from YouTube. We are going to be having our own user tag. So instead of having to give my whole YouTube channel, I will be able to say, hey, go follow me on YouTube at the Gabe Little Experience over there, and it'll make it very much, yeah, agree. But there you go. Hello, Anthony. How are you doing? All right. And yes, there you go. Yolanda hit the bell. Another wonderful subscriber over there on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in on YouTube. And of course, we are streaming on our favorite platform, LinkedIn. So if you're checking us out again, go to my profile, hit the bell there. That's right. It'll let you know whenever I drop new events, any kind of post, anything that I share on my profile. It will notify you in your notification. So head over there, and then you can follow me over there on Twitter as well at Stream Tornado on Twitter. So, all right, let's get started with this evening's show. So, how do I say? How should I put this? Hello, Lee. Thank you for tuning in, my friend. I had a wonderful day. Busy as hell from the morning I got up until pretty much now. Been playing a catch up a lot from this past weekend, and there was a lot of things that I needed to take care of in house. So it was one of those days where I had to do so many things. Plus, I had a virtual seminar today, which was fun. I got to talk about LinkedIn Live, and Lee. Well, apparently. A debate is brewing in the chat whether or not Tex-Mex is real food. If my cousin Lena were here, of course she would. She would poke somebody's eyes out. They considered it that, but do not call it Mexican cuisine, please. That is a fight battle I'm not going to take right now. So, but let me move forward. So, got to do a virtual summit today with some awesome people. Miss Tegan Bartos, Mr. Dan Mott, who's been on the show. I've been on his. What a clusterfuck. I got to go back on his show. And myself ended the show out. It was wonderful. Got to talk about LinkedIn Live and how to actually navigate it and how to use it. So, why is Tex-Mex not food? Well, Bob, I don't know. I guess it would be considered if you did how do I say this very gently? If you mixed Italian with, I don't know, Korean. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not trying to pick out any, but if that was the culture and you started, seeing, I don't know, Korean spices in the way that they made their pastas, I don't know. There she is. So we are talking about, hey, Lena, your ears must have been burning, girl. We were just talking about you. We were debating Tex-Mex, whether or not it's actual food. And my friend Raquel would agree. Raquel is cutting into the Yankee. I'm sorry, bud. I'm sorry. They did win. That was a good thing. They beat Cleveland. Now they got to deal with Houston. So they got their hands full. And my fellow Houstonians who are watching here will tell you that's going to be a hard fight for you to have, man. So, all right. Why haven't I got into our guest? Well, I don't know if our guest is not here. I've reached out, pinged him, dude, whatever. Got his email, sent him over on LinkedIn. Who knows? So we are just going to go fly like we usually do and see what happens. If he tends to show up, he'll show up. If not, then we'll just continue to go forward. But I do have some things lined up that we can talk about. But before we do, of course, head over to our MPro Media Swag store. Get you some MPro Media Swag, of course. Tonight, please, you can see me in my... you can see me in my MPro Media hat. Sporting my swag tonight. So please head over to our MPro Media Swag. Get you a hat, a shirt, a mug. Help a brother out. That's what we do. So get it there. Okay. I believe our guest has now shown up. So we'll bring this in. And sorry to be interrupting the Yankee game tonight. Steve, thank you for tuning in, and he is a Yankee fan. So I don't know, homered. So 1-0 strike. Okay, Yankees on the side. All right, cool. Thank you for dropping ALCS updates in the chat. Okay, guys, let me get started with our guest for the evening. And of course, I want to always be mindful of your guys' time, so I do appreciate it. But please help me welcome to the show our guest for the evening. Well, you know what? Let me give him the proper introduction. I didn't even get to do that because we had everything going on, and that's the whole crazy thing about some of these. I don't know, everything that goes on. Sometimes everything doesn't go right. That's what live streaming is, folks. You never know what's going to happen. But let me get this gentleman his proper intro, because I would feel it wouldn't count, right? So this guy has actually started a few businesses, and I got introduced to him through a former guest of the show, Miss Arena Friedman Watts. We had a wonderful conversation. And I have to bring this up. Hello, Harpreet. It's been a while. Please reach out. It's been a while. Would love to check in on how you're doing. Harpreet was one of my very first guests from season 1. Let's see if I got this right. Season 1, episode 5. Somebody go check that out on YouTube. Harpreet, check that out. Okay. All right. Sorry to stop everything down. Okay. He's written a book that I want to share, because it is one of those things where sharing his story and what he's done and going through the trials and tribulations of working and starting businesses and working in partnerships. He's found his way to be successful, and he's wanting to help other entrepreneurs and people get started down that path as well. And I love what he has called his book. He's written his newest book called Freedom Day. Check this title out, guys. Quit the job. Can I talk? I can't talk right now. Quit the job you hate. Live the life you love. And we'll send you over there in just a bit to go check out the website. Don't do this until the end of the show, but it's www.freedomdaybook.com. Please help me welcome to the show my guest for the evening, the amazing, the wonderful, the very interesting. I want to hear so much more about him, guys, and I think you will too. Mr. Jeff Kikel, please let me bring you in here. There you are. How you doing, Jeff?
What's up, dude?
Welcome,
hey, man. How you doing?
I am doing wonderful. Good. Yes. Good, man. So first of all, thank you for stopping in and doing the show?
Sorry,
How
I was
was
a little late there. I went into the room and it's like, okay, it's just sitting there saying connecting, and I just happened to pull you up on LinkedIn. I'm like, hey, he's slamming me here. Come on, man.
Well, look, the thing is, LinkedIn has been acting crazy sometimes.
Yeah,
For those who don't know, it was a crazy day on the platform. A lot of shit was going wrong. So
that's awesome.
it happens, folks. So Tanya, thank you for tuning in as well. Um, all right, Mr. Jeff. First of all, let's get started in sharing a little bit more about you. For those who don't know exactly who Jeff is, why don't you give us a little, give us just a small taste of the backstory of
The craziest that or craziness that is me.
that. Yes, as you described it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, um, that's just one of the things where we go through in life, and those are the
Yep.
things that usually track through us. So, tell us a little bit more about yourself, Jeff.
Well, I was born a poor black child. Oh no, sorry,
Oh,
wrong,
wrong
wrong
show.
movie. Yeah. Now I spent 25 years of my career as a working basically as an employee for other people. Always thought that I would start a business. I've been in the financial services industry almost 30 years at this point. I think this is my 29th year in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and had worked for a couple of very large firms during that time period. Most of that time was spent in the Dallas area. And then I moved down to Austin about 10 years ago to work for another big financial firm. Thought that I'd be there for the rest of my career. 2 years later, after working for a public company, I realized why I never wanted to work for a public company ever, and decided that it was time to leave. And, I really had to make a decision at that time. Was I going to take the next corporate job somewhere, which I had a really good job lined up, or was I going to take the opportunity to go independent at that point? And I decided that, well, actually, my wife kind of decided for us. She was like, all right, we just moved 2 years ago. If we move one more time, that's it. And that's where we're moving and we're staying. And the option was we were moving to Colorado or to Denver or to Albuquerque, which is where she grew up. And she was not real excited about moving to the land of enchantment, or what I call the land of entrapment.
Entrapment.
So we decided that we were going to stay here in Austin. I would go off on my own, start a business. I kind of did a pseudo where I went out sort of on my own, but I managed my own office, but I was still kind of an employee of a company,
Yeah.
and did that for a couple of years. Got swayed away from that to go to work for another firm that offered me the world and gave me the crap. And I really made a decision at that point that I was never going to work for anybody ever again. I was just done. My last review that I've ever actually had, the president of the company looked me square in the eye as my boss left the room and said, "You are the worst employee we've ever had. You're too independent. You just do things without asking for permission." And I looked at him and went, "But that's what you asked me to do." And
Right.
then yeah. And so, fine, I'm done. I'm out of here. I quit my job 3 months later. I had been going through this weird little entrepreneurial journey. Found a podcast called the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, John Lee Dumas. And
Mm-hmm.
I was commuting between Dallas and Austin. And so I would listen to his show at double speed. So I could catch like 11 shows on the way up and 11 shows on the way down. And I just called it entrepreneurial brainwashing,
Mm.
and really listened to the first 30 to 50 shows that John did. And, all these people on these shows were no smarter than I was. They were people that, found a way to create a career for themselves or create a business for themselves. And I just realized, well, why can't I do this? So I went off and I stayed in the financial services industry. I launched a practice, an independent practice, but I also launched a co-working space. And
Mm.
nobody in the town that I'd lived had ever had a co-working space there. There was one competitor that kind of popped in, and I was the I was the only guy. And, I went to 17 banks to get banked for that. Learned a lot about getting financing, learned a hell of a lot painfully over the next 2 to 3 years of what it was like to start and own a business, which if you've never done that before, it's a very painful thing sometimes.
Yes.
And we went from making a solid solid 6-figure income to almost losing our house twice,
Wow.
um, to literally going to the grocery store with change to try and figure out what we could buy. And I mean, it was a challenge. It was a time period of, okay, what the hell are we doing? And certainly it was that period of time that I always call, when somebody starts a business, that first 18 months, when the first 12 months are great because you're not making any money, but you're having fun,
Yeah.
and you're getting to start something new and it's cool. And, you go from month 12 through to month 24, and I call that the suck. And it just sucked. And it was horrible. And, like I said, we went through all that financial turmoil at the time. And of course, I'm teaching people about finances. And, I'm basically sitting here trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to pay the bills
Right.
as we're building these businesses. So, 2, 3 years in, we survived. We didn't quit. There were a couple times where we almost said, you know what, we're just hanging it up. I might as well just go back and get a job. I'll tuck my tail between my legs and go back and get a job. And that's basically, I'll just go back to my cubicle and die a little bit every day. And I just couldn't. I just couldn't go back to that. And so we just sucked it up, figured it out, I'm in the finance business, but I didn't really watch my numbers the way I should. And that's the failure of most small businesses, is they didn't watch their numbers. And just put my head down, started watching the numbers carefully, looked at our margins, looked at ways to raise revenue, get rid of expenses. And, we built a business that was extremely successful. We ended up, so far, have opened 3 co-working spaces under our T-Works brand. I built a very successful financial practice with a partner, over $150 million in assets under management. A couple other businesses, publishing business in that time period. And then all of these basically kind of serve the same master, and a lot of
Right.
different vehicles that serve different purposes for me. And really, it was kind of almost unfocused a little bit because I was doing so many things. And my partner came to me this year and said, you know what, I think I want to take the practice this way, and you want to take it this way. And I was already working on the whole Freedom Day concept, and really was wanting to move down that path. And so I agreed to a buyout, which, after 6 years worth of work, having a 7-figure buyout was a nice little enjoyment. It was,
Indeed.
certainly got paid for the years of work and the struggles and fights that we had.
Right.
But the other part of it was, and he and I had this conversation, and he's like, well, what are you going to do now? And I really had to sit there and think, well, what the hell are you going to do? I mean, I've got enough money that if I didn't really want to work, I didn't really have to
Yeah.
anymore. I love what I do, and I have a passion for what I'm trying to help people do. And
Right.
so I just decided, you know what? I'm going to do what I love doing, and I'm just going to take all the things that I was doing and just completely focus it down onto one mission. And that one mission is to help as many people as I possibly can reach their Freedom Day.
That is interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. What
I was
happened
like, what
there?
is that now? But
No, my scene switcher did not work well. Okay. But no, to your point of, uh, you know, going through the struggles, and then even being in the perspective of now, you no longer, um, have to so much worry about what you went through in the first few years that you started a business, right?
yeah.
Um, so let me ask you before we start talking into the book and everything that you've written, like, what are some of the things that you keep? in the back of your mind as far as like the perspective of what it is and remembering those moments, um, as you've moved forward and how you've sort of used a lot of those experiences in helping others. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
reason why you wanted to do this. What are
Yeah.
some
And I
things?
mean, for me, it was, yeah. So I changed my mindset. I grew up in the financial services industry where, what you did is and I worked for Fidelity Investments for 17 years. And, the mantra was, all right, save as much as you can into your 401k. And then if you have more money, save to an IRA. And then if you have more money than that, maybe you could save some money into some after tax savings and things like that. But it was all around serving the master, which was Fidelity, or serving the master, which was Schwab, or anything like that. And, the financial services industry, don't get me wrong, I love it. And I love financial planning. I've worked in this industry for a very good chunk of my life, almost half my life at this point. But I also came to the realization that I look back and I'm like, dude, I wasn't, it wasn't me investing in the stock market that got me to where it was. I mean, it was me investing in things that created cash flow that got me to where it was, to where I am. So it was not only the fact that I created a business or multiple businesses that generated cash flow for me, it's also the fact that I invested in real estate that generated cash flow for me.
Mm,
And basically, what I realized is I needed to, for me, when I was sitting there thinking about, holy crap, sitting there trying to pull up change to go buy, my poor wife trying to figure out how to make meals. And I mean, whatever it took to survive, I came back to the fact that, what, if we had just had some kind of cash flow and if we'd have prepared for this a little bit better, we'd have been so much better off. And that was really what I started focusing on was, all right, what can we do? First off, what is what I call your minimum essential income? What do I absolutely have to have every month to reach my minimum essential income? That's what I need to run the house. That's what my nut is every month. And honestly, it was kind of not so scary when I started thinking about it, because that exercise we went through with, holy crap, we have to cut back on everything. We can't live the life that we were living before. Well, that was kind of okay, because we realized, you know what, we don't need to eat out as much. We're actually better cooks than most chefs. So we started cooking a lot of our own meals. We started looking at even the way we bought stuff. All right, before we might buy, let's say, a bag of hash browns, which cost, $8 or something like that, whereas I can buy a potato and create fresh stuff.
right.
So that never changed for us afterwards. I mean, yes, we've gotten a little looser with the budget and we buy things when we want them, but that really never changed. And so that came back to, what is my minimum essential income? And it was not a scary number. It was like $5,000 a month is what it takes for us, with mortgage and the stuff that it takes to run our life. It's about $5,000 a month. And I came to the realization, man, it ain't so hard to make $5,000 a month. If you work on something and you work on a project, it's actually kind of easy to get to that point. And then when you get to that point, if you're taking that money and using it to buy other investments like cash flowing real estate, maybe create another business that's highly focused on, creating an income, a consistent income,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't have any stress anymore. I mean, honestly, I don't have any stress. I've got the amount of income coming in. That's why I said, I mean, I don't ever have to work again if I didn't want to. So a lot of those monies are getting, that are coming from the sale of the business, are getting refocused into other real estate, things that grow in value over time, some other
Right.
investments, maybe a little bit of market investments in there, so that I have liquidity. But that's really the key, is that's the first step in the what I call the Freedom Day method. Is you got to know what your minimum essential income is, and it's probably not near as scary as you think, because a lot of people make more money than that, but they don't really necessarily need that much money to survive.
Right. And um, as as we go into this a little bit deeper. Let me ask you this. Um, so when you've done any kind of working or coaching with people in the past,
Yep.
um, like what do you think is probably the biggest mistake that a lot of people make um, when they start doing something like this, like starting an entrepreneurial journey, and
Mhm.
it gets them to a point where they have to reach out to somebody like you, or else
Yeah.
or it's church and everything's done, and they're not going to be able to make it.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think more than anything, it is you got to start with a plan. First, like I said, you got to know what the nut is before you do anything, which is a pretty
Mm-hmm.
easy process. You go through literally write down what you spend money on, and all right, that's what my nut is. And I might say in some cases, all right, now take an extra 20% and add to that minimum nut because you're going to need money to be able to kind of fund your journeys as you go. And then from there, it's really trying to get yourself excited about something. And this, I think for me, was the aha moment. And it was kind of a much later piece
Uh-huh.
that came in. It was actually, it is funny because it was right after my partner came to me and said, "Hey, I want to buy you out." And I was going through this kind of weird existential crisis. And I just happened to go on a little retreat to California. It was paid for by one of the companies I deal with. And I had 4 days by myself. My wife didn't come because she usually doesn't like coming to these events.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in this really beautiful place. The first day, I got handed the bucket list journal from Ben Nemetin. So if you don't know who Ben is, he did a show with three friends of his on MTV called The Buried Life. And it was all about them putting together this bucket list, and then they kind of lived it out. And I had 4 days sitting there in a hotel room, really beautiful hotel room, beautiful place. I would never spend the money to go to someplace like
Like,
this. And I just literally sat there and put together a bucket list of things that I wanted to do before I die. And all of a sudden, it was the aha moment. I was like, holy crap, this is what is missing in everything that has been part of my life. It's been everything that's been messing with the clients that I worked with. Because our industry, what we teach people is, well, you just need to amass this, this number. You need to get to this magic number of $2 million, $3 million, whatever that number is.
right.
Except we say, well, amass the number and then the income part will work out. Well, no, that's
That's
not
not how
it.
it works.
And it might take me 40 years to amass
It's
that
that money.
magic number.
That's right.
So and I think I told you this. I mean, what I tell
Yeah.
people now is, all right, you can work with me and you'll have to do things different from the way the industry tells you, or you can do it the way the industry's been teaching you for the last 40, 50 years. Okay, just take every bit of money that you have extra, put it away, and in 40 years you're going to get to live the life that you want. Except you're going to have to downsize your house, and you're going to have to buy one crappy car, and
Yeah.
you're going to do 2 cruises a year for the rest of your life. And that's going to be your life for the next 30 years. And I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me.
No, I don't think it works. Well, people. I think that's the oversight that most of them don't see down the line.
Hmm.
Because it does get to that point where it's like, well, okay, I've reached this point now. What do we do? And then it's all of a
Yeah.
sudden, yeah, it's me having to go to, get my senior discount at Denny's
Yeah.
because that's life. I mean, come on, that
I don't want that life. And I
I
mean,
don't.
that was yeah, I mean, that was the impetus of,
No.
as I formulated Freedom Day over time. I looked at it and I said, well, what are the problems? You always, when you're an entrepreneur, you're always looking at, well, what are the problems? How do we fix it? And I looked at, well, what's the problem? Well, first off, if we're just saving to this mystical, magical number, that mystical, magical number doesn't mean crap to anybody. They don't, you can't relate to $2 million when you're starting out with $10,000.
Right.
It's just, you're sitting here looking at, there's no way in hell I'm going to get there. Well, you might eventually get there, but it's probably going to take you 40 or 50 years to get there. it's not real exciting. And everybody kind of has this belief that, okay, well, I'm going to retire at 67. Okay, well, that's a finish line. I use the tagline for my business, more than a finish line. It's
Right.
not a finish line. It is about getting your freedom day. And your freedom day is the first day that you woke up and you have a work optional lifestyle. That could literally be in a month. For me, it was my first freedom day was, all right, I had my last review ever in December of 2015. I spent the next 3 months planning my exit.
Mm-hmm.
I launched a business where it at least paid me enough that I could survive and get to my minimum essential income, and I could literally quit my job. Now, I didn't really plan for how much businesses, if you don't plan the fact, cost.
Yeah.
And my rosy plan of here's what I think is going to happen. Every time I talk to somebody about a business, and if they're going to start one, and especially one that you're going to have to rely on for your income, just plan on it's going to cost you double as much and it's going to take you 2 times as long to get there.
Mm, that's a hard pill for some to think about. I mean, when you
Yeah.
really, when you
Well,
think,
I mean, it's just,
because it's the idea of the grandeur that I'm gonna start a business, right? I mean, that's
oh,
the,
yeah.
and it's like, oh, that's the mindset. Oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing it,
Yep.
right? And then you think about it, and you're like, whoa, it's gonna take me what and what,
Yeah.
and then it comes to that moment of reality,
Yeah.
right? And it has to take a lot. Look, it has to probably take a lot, and you've gone through this to
Mm.
hold yourself back from giving up on it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure there's at points, you're just like, I've made the wrong decision. I mean, the
Yep.
self doubt, all the small talk that goes off in your mind. It's like, um, how do you push through that? Let me ask you this, because you've done it. How do you push through that to continue down that mission when you have every single thing and every single factor pointing against your success?
Well, I mean, so this is kind of it's kind of a weird cliche, I guess, or whatever the best way to explain it. But I spent the first 5 years of my working life as an Army Ranger, and I jumped out of planes for a living. I did long hikes and all that, and literally, summer of 2016, that was our first summer, really the first full summer. I guess 2017, that was our first full summer in the business, and what I hadn't counted on, especially when you're running co-working spaces, is you're dealing mostly with entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs, especially maybe not the most successful entrepreneurs in the world,
Yeah.
um, they would, okay, yeah, they're working their butts off, from January through until May, and then all of a sudden they're all, well, I'm going to take the summer off and hang out with my kids, so I don't really need my membership right now. And I'm sitting there going, well, I have a freaking, I have a lease on this freaking property. Well, we'll come back in the fall. And I'm like, well, we may not be here in the
In the
fall.
fall.
And I mean, there was literally a period of time in the summer of 2017. I remember coming home from work and sitting there in front of my wife, and she was not really working inside the business at that time yet. But I mean, we're partners in the business, and we own the largest share of the business. And I mean, I came home and I was like, babe, I don't know what we're gonna do. I mean, I was literally in tears, and I was just like, I
Mm.
don't know what to do. I just don't have it. And I mean, she looked at me in the eye and she's like, we've got to shut this thing down and just get out of it at this point. File for bankruptcy, get out of it. And I looked her in the eye, and I just thought about all the people that relied on me for a place to come to work every day. Not just the people that work for me, but the people that worked in my space.
Right.
And I was just like, I can't do it. I just cannot do this to them. I cannot, just come in and close the doors and say, well, screw it, we're just done, I quit. And as I have many times in my life, I drew myself back to a ruck march in the military, and I remembered from the time I was in basic training and advanced training through many, many, many marches over the years, what was the way that you made it through a 20-mile march with a 80-pound pack on your back? You leaned into it and you just took one step at a time. Just
Mm.
lean into the pack and just take another step and take another step and take another step. And that's honestly exactly what we did. It was, literally I went to work the next day and I'm like, what's my step today? What do I need to do today? Okay, what can I, let me look at my budget. What can still be cut? I had been cutting everything I could at that point, and there were some things that, the best one ever was, we had signed up, as a new business owner, you don't know anything. So we had signed up for this insanely expensive copier that we had because we had to have the best copier. Well, until I had somebody go, oh, well, I'm going to print off like 4,000 pages of color. And I got $1,000 bill right at the beginning of the summertime. And I couldn't tell exactly who it was who had done it. And I remember I called the copier company and I'm like, we got to do something about this. And they said, well, we have an ironclad contract. And I said, well, I'm not going to pay it. And they said, well, we're going to come pick the copier up. And I went, okay, come get it.
Come get it.
Come pick up the copier. I went and bought a $300 printer and set it up. And we've got the same $300 printer we've had for the last, the last 5 years or 4 years or whatever it was. But I mean, it was one of those things. It's like, you know what? There is no, yes, I believe in contracts, but when it's going to kill your business, you just have to do it. Same thing with our internet. We were paying like $1,200 or $1,400 a month for this enterprise level of net or internet, and I kept calling them. I'm like, guys, you're killing my business. I cannot keep doing this. Well, I'm sorry, you have a contract with us. And so finally, I was just like, screw it, I'm not going to pay it anymore. Just happened the little AT&T guy wheeled in one day who had been bugging the crap out of me, and he's like, hey, we have this fiber internet for $200 a month. And I'm like, sign me up, dude. And they came in, hooked it up. And, the other one was like, well, we're going to cut you off. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Instant $1,100 bill gone. And now it's $200. So those are those kind of things where it was like, okay, well, I'm honoring these contracts. But I mean, the reality is I honor the contract, I'm out of business. Or I just say, screw you, I'm done. I can't pay you anymore. I'm out of here. And, we moved on, and we leaned out the business and we leaned into it and looked for other ways to make more money and get people in there. And, we got through the summer of 2017, got to the fall, the business was leaned out. Everybody started coming back in. And was that inflection period that if we'd have quit, a month or two earlier, we'd have never made it, but we just pushed through. So no matter how hard it is, how awful it is, sometimes you just have to suck it up and lean into it.
There you go. And now you're here. Look at that. So real quick, I'm just going to make a few comments. Raquel is just saying she admires your library back there. Quite a few books back behind you. And
oh yeah, I've now, unfortunately, I've spilled out into another room and to another room. So this is just the initial library. The annex are to the left here. So
okay, and why don't we talk about now and share about the book? So what was the idea of? Where did you come up with the actual idea of like writing the book and putting this together? And what was the one thing that you would say you're most proud of because of it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what this came out of is over the last about 8 years, I would say 8 to 10 years, working with clients in the traditional retirement planning space, I started to see this kind of weird thing going on in the space. Now, of course, the industry just keeps on peddling the same advice over and over and over again, just save as much money and all that. But what I kept seeing from my clients was if they were younger, and if let's say they were millennial generation or maybe just a little bit older than that, but especially the millennial generation folks, that whole concept of I'm going to spend 40 years giving up life to eventually be able to have a life just doesn't work for them at all.
Right.
You know, and I always call them the post 4-hour work week generation. You know, I mean, Tim, no matter what you think of Tim Ferriss, I mean, Tim was the guy that taught lifestyle design. You know, I've literally read that book at least 3 times a year, every year since it came out in 2008. Because I love Tim's stuff. I mean, I go back now and look at it and it's like, wow, is that complicated? But you know, that generation of folks was like, I want to live life today. I don't want to do this. Well, that can hurt you if you're using that traditional mindset, because if you decide, well, I'm just going to spend all my money now, then, okay, well, you're not going to be saving. And that traditional, okay, single digit returns compounded over time doesn't work because you're not saving enough early on.
Right.
And then I had a lot of people who didn't really save well, you know, that were more of the boomers or kind of in between the boomers and like Gen X, which is me, that didn't save well. And they're like, well, I'm never going to be able to, retire at age 66. I'm going to have to work for the rest of my life and all that. Well, as I started doing some planning with folks and I started to look at things from more of a cash flow standpoint, all of a sudden I was like, well, no, you're going to be fine. I mean, I've done this so long, I can look at the numbers and go, this is going to work. And so I think it was one client that I knew, I just looked at it and I'm like, all right, let me throw the stuff at the software, but I'm just telling you, it's going to be okay. And I told him, I was like, well, you have your freedom day. You've reached your freedom day. You got up and went to work today and you didn't have to go to work. And I saw this smile pop on their face. And it was that moment. And I was like, this is kind of fun because I've been doing retirement planning for years and rarely do I see a smile on people's face. Most of the time it's holy shit, I'm never going to make it.
Right.
But, you know, you would have people with, hey, Freedom Day, this is kind of cool. I could reach this point where I have a work optional lifestyle. And then the reality started to come, well, okay, you don't have to wait. Once again, focus on the cash flow. And if you focus on the cash flow, you can get there sooner. I mean, you could literally have, like I said, for me, it was 3 months. I mean, from the time that by the time I mentally quit my job and then the time I actually quit my job, it was literally 3 months exactly. It was March 1st, 2016 that I didn't even walk in. I just came in on the weekend, took all my crap out of my office and sent them an email on Monday and said, I'm out of here. See ya. And I don't really care. I'm not going back to work for anybody ever again. But I came to that realization. All right, let's start teaching people, instead of talking about these big dollar amounts, let's start talking to people about planning that says what's going to generate that actual income, and have a plan and a strategy for how you're going to generate the income and then how you're going to pay for the fun stuff too. Right. And that was really the impetus of Freedom Day. That's really how it all started. And then I started to really codify it over the years. I realized that most people think of freedom, and if I say Freedom Day, they're like, oh, well, it's financial freedom. Well, that's not quite it. It's financial freedom, of course. I mean, that's what everybody wants to reach, and financial freedom can be reached just by creating a cash flow to do it.
Right.
But it's time freedom too. That's another one. And that's a big one, because a lot of people, I was just listening to an ebook today, or I was listening to an Audible of Mike Michalowicz's Clockwork. And he was talking about, and there he's like, yeah, I went through this whole series of all these different like time management courses and all these productivity courses so I could work harder and longer, and I'll do all this so I could be successful. And he's like, I still wasn't successful. But because I built 2 businesses that I sold off for multi-million-dollar exits and all this. And I was still going on vacation at the Jersey Shore every year, trying to sneak away and look at emails and all this. And then he goes, and where I just left off before I left the car today, and it was just absolutely perfect. He's like, my wife took my phone away and told me to go take a walk down the beach. And he goes, I was walking down the beach, looking at all these big multi-million-dollar mansions on the beach, and thinking, God, I wish just someday I could be like that guy who's got it figured out And he goes, I'm walking along the beach and seeing all these people sitting out on their little patios in their multi-million-dollar mansions, banging on a keyboard. And he's like, they still hadn't figured it out. So
No.
time freedom is an extreme amount. You've got to be able to utilize that time and utilize it effectively, not just fill time with time and fill time with stuff to do, but fill it with things that energize you, fill it with things that you want to do. And then that helps you to get to that next level. And then the last one, and this was the one that took me until I went to California. And it's the one I teach people at the beginning now that I learned at the end. And that is a bucket list, or what I call the freedom of intention, and being intentional about life, because that's the problem. That's the biggest issue that's out there, is if you don't have intentionality in your life, then this saving for something down the road means nothing for you. And then you'll look for ways to do anything else but save. You'll look for a way. Oh, well, my kids have got to go to the most expensive college on the planet. Okay, well, do they really? They want to be a teacher, and you're sending them to a school that costs $200,000 a year, and they're going to make $30,000 a year as a teacher. Is that really the smartest thing to do?
Right.
And so that intentionality of, I want to do these things. These are the things that were on my bucket list. And I'll give you the example that is starting next month. I looked at my bucket list, and I am a huge car, train, plane, anything like that nut. Anything that involves transportation, I'm a nut of. And I started to look at my list of things, and there was a theme. A bunch of them were something to do with planes, trains, or automobiles. And I realized that the cost of most of the things that I wanted to do was roughly about $400 to $600, right?
Yeah.
So I came to the realization, I'm like, well, okay, I can do this. I can plan for this. All I need to do is create an income source that creates roughly $400 to $600 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I can fund this stuff for 12 months. I can do 12 of these things over 12 months, all these fun, cool things that I've ever wanted to do. And all I need to do is create an income source to do that. So I started looking around. All right, what do I have in my life? I mean, without taking money out of my pocket, without taking money out of a paycheck, what can I do to generate $400 to $600 a month? And I took a course on YouTube, how to monetize a YouTube channel. And I followed the instructions exactly the way the guy talked about it, started building a YouTube channel, got it monetized. Well, that's generating about $1,000 a month now after about 3 months. So now, all right, I'm there. I've got my
Yeah.
$1,000
You
a
found
month.
it.
I don't need it to live on, but now it funds my thing. So the first thing, as soon as F1 leaves Austin here, I've already paid for this, is I want to go drive a Lamborghini at the F1 track here in Austin. Boom. That's the first of my check it off the bucket list items that I wanted to do. And I'll just do the same thing with all the other things on my list. I'll just do that over a 12-month period.
Wow. And, for anybody who, like you said, one of the things that I really love that you talked about was having intention behind all of this, right?
Yep.
Because I've come to realize that as well, is that if you don't have especially a more specific intention behind a lot of the things, you're just going to be running that whole circle. You're just going to be
Yep.
you're not going to gain any kind of traction.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where a lot of people will stop and give up because they
Yeah.
feel like I'm running in mud. It's
Well, I have no control.
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, oh, well, I mean, I hear this from so many people. Well, I mean, you can't make it, investing in the stock market, because it's all rigged against you. Well, no, it isn't. It just takes time, and you have to break it down once again into cash flow numbers. Okay, we know that if you look at the history of the stock market, the best that it's ever done, or the long-term history, is it's about 9.8% over time. Well, we look at the rule of 72. That's how we figure out how fast it takes to double your money. You divide 72 by 9.8, and that turns out to be, roughly it takes you 5 to 7 years to double your money. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, if I can invest in real estate with part of my money, and I can get anywhere from a 12 to 25% return on invested capital, well, I'm going to get there in like 3 years or less.
Yes.
If I can invest in a business where I may be able to improve it. I mean, one of the businesses that actually came off of a guest of one of my podcasts, he was talking about, well, he invested in, he started blogging, and he was building up, he built up his own blog, and then he started buying other blogs. He was buying them from people, and effectively what he would do, it's just like rehabbing a property. He would come in, buy something that was a seasoned website. Maybe it cost him $4,000 to $5,000. He would take that. It was cash flowing, maybe $300, $400, $500 a month. He would work on it. He would use the techniques that he learned on his own blog, maybe get that up to, $2,000, $3,000 a month. And he would turn around and sell that. He'd sell the website for, whatever the multiple was, which it's typically, like 30 times your monthly income.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a pretty easy way to do. It's really not that hard to do that. Yeah. So I mean, there's so many ways to make money, and I mean, it just really depends. But the thing I tell people is, once again, when it comes to freedom of time, half of my audience on my podcast are people that are what I call the cubicle warriors. Man, those are those people that get up every day, they go into the office, they die a little bit every day, sitting there in a cubicle, and they all wish that they were someplace else. They all wish that they were doing something else. Well, we all have the same 168 hours a week of time. So if you subtract out, let's call it 40 to 50 hours for work, you subtract out 40 to 50 hours for sleep, it still leaves 68 hours a week that you can apply to all these other things that you have a passion about, that you have an intention about in your life. Yes. So just think about it. This is a Tim Ferriss thing, when he talks about learning languages, and I'm a language guy. So, I looked at, I want to learn how to speak Spanish fluently. I want to be able to have a conversation within 3 months with a native Spanish speaker and actually be able to have a conversation with them. So I started doing the math, and I'm like, well, crap, if I just apply an hour a day, that's 7 hours a week out of my extra 68 that I have, that I can learn to speak Spanish well enough that I can have a conversation with somebody that is a native Spanish speaker in about 3 months. So bucket list item, put it out there, very intentional. I gave myself something specific. It was measurable. There's time-based. Boom. That's what I focused on. And I just put it on my calendar every day when I get home. I'm going to spend an hour on Babbel. And an hour on Babbel is a hell of a lot. I mean, you can get through about 3 chapters of Babbel. If you don't know what that is, it's a phone app for language learning. But, an hour a day is a hell of a lot. And you will get there really, really, really fast. I mean, when I used to do it, I would do it for I would do one section, which is like 10 minutes. And I was learning, but I wasn't learning at the level that I'm learning now. And that was, like I said, that intentionality, that was the thing. And I think that's why I teach this at the very, very beginning with clients now. I mean, I give them when they become a client, I give them a copy of the freedom, or I give them a copy of a bucket list journal. Yeah. So that's a gift. And then I give them my friend Roger Williams did a book called Living Your List. And Roger, he runs the Crosser Offer podcast, good friend of mine. And Roger's book is the instruction manual of how to do a bucket list. Mm-hmm. And I get them doing that right away. As soon as they become a client, that's an investment I make in them because I want them to start thinking that way.
Yeah, man. And that's the first layer that
Yeah.
starts it all. And get them in. And
Well,
get
it
them.
is, and it's what you'll find is if you start to lay those things out and you start to put a price tag on them, you do what Tim Ferriss calls dreamlining, which is, all right, here's what I'm going to do for the next 6 months. Here's what I'm going to do in the next 12 months. Here's the price tag for it. Here's the steps I need to do to get to that. Once you start doing that, then all of a sudden it's like, I'm going to be going to Spain, as Roger did. I'm going to go to Spain and I want to do the Camino de Santiago, 35 days hiking across Spain on the pilgrim's route. Well, I need to be able to speak Spanish during that time period. Well, I've got 8 months until I'm going. Guess what? I'm going to spend an hour a day speaking Spanish.
Getting ready for it, man. That's the way to do
Yeah.
it. I mean, you've taken the mindset that a lot of athletes have when they prepare, and they know what the investment is, right? That's the big thing, is like, if there's going to be a payoff there's also an investment into getting to that point, right? And that is for us is making those mental mind shifts and taking the actual time to invest in them.
Well, and it's you getting up and doing these shows every day. It's me doing podcasts, twice a week. I do 2 podcasts a week. I do every day. I do a piece of content on one of my social media channels.
Yeah, and you gotta, and that's the key to it, right?
Consistency.
There you go. Everybody asks, what's the secret sauce? Everybody asks, what's the secret sauce? Like, what is this? You're like, come here. I'm going to tell you the secret sauce right now. And and they ask, and then you go, okay, you ready? Got your pen? Is it right? Write a line. Does it write? Okay, good. Okay, right. All right, you ready? Ready? Consistency.
Yeah.
If you're consistent and you're persistent about these sort of things, you'll get to that point of where you want to. It just takes you having the resolve to do it.
My mentor on YouTube, I think he puts it better than anybody. Mike English puts it better than anybody puts it. He's like, YouTube is my job. I get up every day and I go to work. That's it.
That's it.
John Lee Dumas with the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, I heard him interviewed one time, and they were like, well, John, you've had this massively successful, you make $200,000 a month on your podcast, and what is the secret to your success? And he said, I got up every day and I did 2,000 podcasts until I was successful.
Until you were successful. Exactly.
Done.
Right. People
he was successful long before then, but he was like, I got up every day and I did 2,000 podcasts.
Right.
That's how I became successful.
Right. And then people want to know. I love it, because when you start doing it and they're like, well, you're like an overnight success. No.
Yeah.
I don't think you
I'm a 6-year
overnight success. Yeah. Dude. Thanks for telling me that. I appreciate it. Okay. So one more thing, Jeff, before I wrap up and get out of here. Is there one item on that bucket list that, that would be a passion purchase, something that you just want because you can have it now?
So purchases for me, it was the hardest thing, because in Ben's version of I give out a different version of the bucket list journal.
Yes.
But in Ben's version of the bucket list journal, he breaks it down into 10 separate sections, 10 separate sections. And then what you do is you create 10 items under each section. And one of those is like your purchases. And that was the hardest section for me, because I really don't, monetary stuff is I've come to the realization in my life, I've got enough crap. You can see it behind me. God, just in this room alone, I've got enough crap. I don't really need anything more. So for me, it's more experiential. Yes. And I was having a conversation. I was on my friend Roger's podcast, and we were sitting there and we were talking about different bucket list items and what I was going to check off and all this. And he and I, before in the pre-show, we had been talking about, he loves trains. And I was like, well, I love trains and I love planes and I love all this stuff. And I was like, Roger, damn it, I'm on here and I am not doing the freaking Camino de, Santiago. There's no friggin' way. I hiked when I was in the military. I'm not doing it anymore. I don't camp. But I was like, I am going to say it right here now. I am going to do a planes, trains, and automobiles tour of America. And so I told him right then, I was
Ah,
like, I will lay it out for you, and this is what it's going to be. I am flying from Austin to Chicago. I'm renting a muscle car, and we're going to drive Route 66 the whole way. I've always wanted to do. That there's a whole bunch of things on my list that I can check off on the way. Finishing in Santa Monica, California, and one of the things on my bucket list, and once again, on your bucket list, it does not have to be things that cost money. One of the things on my list that I was like, experience I wanted to have is I wanted to sit on a dock by the bay. And I'm like, freaking, I can sit on Santa Monica Dam Pier right there, do
like,
that. That's at the end of the trip.
like
Then
Otis
we're
Redding.
hopping on a train and we're going from Los Angeles all the way up the Coastal Starlight, all the way up to Seattle, where Roger and I, there's a whole bunch of things that I'm going to do on the way, one of which is a rally school that I want to go to. And then I'm going to meet Roger in Seattle, which is where he lives, and we're going to go have drinks, and we're doing a live podcast.
There you go. Look.
Boom. And I was
That
like,
that
it's going to take me about 20 days to do this,
but you're
but
gonna
that's my project for next year. That's my
there
big
you
project
go,
for next
man.
year, is to plan that whole thing out. And once again, think big.
You got
Don't
look
say, well, I can't do this, I
when,
can't get off for 20 days. Well, you know what, Roger took a month off to do the Camino. I mean, he was a
look, you find
took a month
times, right?
off.
You
Yeah,
find those times. You really when you
do it.
want something,
Yeah,
you find that time and you take it and you
yeah,
do and that's what
and
you're
you'll
supposed
find the
to.
money.
Yeah, and you find
Yeah,
everything that goes along with it. Trust me, you do have to do these things. So,
yep,
do me a favor when you do get there to the Santa Monica Pier,
yeah.
um, just grab your phone and put on Otis Redding because that was what it
That,
reminded
that's
me of.
that's the plan, brother.
That's the plan to sit there, just sitting on the dock of the bay,
Sitting on the dock of the bay, man. I'm
wasting
just
time, just sitting
just
here.
I'm gonna enjoy myself. I'm gonna hang out with my wife, and we're just gonna have a blast.
Right.
Um, have really crappy Mexican food because I've never had good Mexican food in California. I'm just saying, sorry for people that are
Sorry,
out there.
California.
I,
That's a,
I heard your comments about Tex-Mex, which is the greatest food on the planet, next to Texas
um,
barbecue. So
well, and this is our country, folks, but the I think it was last year they voted the best taco on Taco Bell. So
Ugh!
I know. But
My wife was she was a manager of a Taco Bell when we first met, and for many months, when for almost 2 to 3 years, she would bring home Taco Bell food because that's what we could afford
and I'm
for
sure,
dinner, and I'm like, I cannot even look at that
yeah,
slop anymore.
right. It is like
Can't do it.
people look for those who've never worked at a restaurant. It is something to get started, but once you're about, oh, let's just put it away about 2 to 3 months in, kind of loses its fun. All of a sudden, like when I was younger, I used to go deliver pizzas and make pizzas, and people are like, oh man, you're making pizzas. And, no, it's I don't
No,
want it anymore. You just it loses all its joy and value out of it. So I totally get that. So all
mm,
right, Jeff, thank you so much for, first of all, coming
I
again on the
appreciate it.
show. I want to direct everybody to go over to
You rock, man.
www.freedomdaybook.com. Please go check out the book that you can get from the website. Also connect with Jeff here on LinkedIn, and he also has a Instagram account. If you want to go head over there and check him out on Instagram, he does do his social media. So you can head over there if he's doing a post on LinkedIn, if he does a post
So
on.
let me just say now, the book's about 3 weeks out at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I would tell them, or here's what I would tell the audience: connect with me on LinkedIn, and here's what I give you a promise. I've got a special offer for Gabe's listeners and some close friends of mine
There
that
you
I'm going
go.
to launch the book, and basically you can get the book for the cost of what it cost me to mail it to you.
There you go.
So that'll be out in about 3 weeks. So just connect with me on LinkedIn's the easiest way, and just say, hey, I heard you on Gabe's show, and I'd
Please. Yes.
love to connect with you.
There you go, folks. Where else are you going to get that, man? Let's give a rousing applause to our guest for the evening. Jeff, thank you for coming on. I do appreciate it. Again, the name of the book is Freedom Day. Quit the job you hate. Live the life you love. I love the title just in itself. All right, Jeff, sit tight. Everybody else, thank you again so very, very much. We will be back tomorrow evening, 8:15 Eastern Standard Time. We're going to make this happen finally. We've rebooked this guest twice, so we're going to go for the third time is the charm. That is our show for this evening. And again, like I always say here every single night, guys, you are the best audience on LinkedIn, bar none. So I want to thank everybody who's tuned in, who's been watching us here on LinkedIn. And of course, I'm not going to ignore my YouTube followers. You're watching over there on YouTube. Thank you again so very much. Again, if you're watching over there, hit the like and subscribe button. I do appreciate it. We're trying to build our viewership over there as well. So until then, guys, you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening, and stay safe, be well, and good night, everybody.